Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have something really cool to take a look at. This is obviously a Terra by Battat set, as you can see the logo right there, front and center. And then as we take a look up here at what is contained within, you can see a gigantic Acrocanthosaurus in there with lots of goodies, as well as there is just a ton of stuff included within this box as far as this really cool playset goes. Again, I love that Terra by Battat kind of went the route of creating some play sets, giving us sort of a Jurassic World type of a feel. It's not something that we have too many out there of, and I'm really excited to see another from the Terra by Battat line. This is actually a set that I've wanted to get a hold of for a long time, as it's one of the last that I needed to obtain of this type of a Terra by Battat figure of the kind of light and sound versions. I did actually review the Tyrannosaur release quite a ways back, and I am happy to now have the Acrocanthosaurus as well. And if you take a look over here, it's actually called the Acrocanthosaurus Jungle Expedition. So that right there is exactly what we are looking at. And then if we turn the box around and we take a look at the back, there is some really cool information as far as the Acrocanthosaurus goes, which is always one fun aspect about the Terra by Battat line, is that they always include some information on the species that you are purchasing, and I actually really love that. And this, again, you can see a huge image here on the back sporting all kinds of information on the Acrocanthosaurus. So let's go ahead, break this out of the box, and take a look at it. So here we are. We have everything now out of the box, and I must say, there is an impressive amount of stuff included in this playset. Like, you really get a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to a playset from the Terra by Battat line, and this one here specifically, because there is just a ton of extras. In fact, it took quite a little while to get everything out of the package. There was so much stuff, and you can see we've got a human figure there, we have a helicopter, a giant dinosaur egg, we have a cage here, there's a bow and arrow, two smaller dinosaurs, and then of course this gigantic kind of like a tree house sort of a fort. You also have a ladder, and then there's like this rope thing, almost looks like a spider web. Like, there's just a ton of stuff here included in this set. So we're going to go ahead, get a closer look at it all right now. So of course, starting with the star of the show, which would be the Acrocanthosaurus. If you are familiar with the previous Acrocanthosaurus release from the Terra by Battat line, or even the Battat line, you will obviously see that this is basically the same figure, but we now have articulation, and it is upscaled immensely. So the size of this one in comparison to the previous version, there is a drastic difference. However, this version here is based more toward children, although the previous one also was, but this one is definitely more so focused toward kids. So the detailing on these kind of larger light and sound version figures, it's not quite as crisp as you see on the smaller models, but again, they're meant to appeal to kids, not so much collectors, although I will say that as a collector, and being a fan of the Battat line, the Terra by Battat line for so long, initially I was a little let down by these figures because I was really hoping for more of the smaller model type figures to continue to be released, but as time has gone on, I've really warmed up to these figures, and I must say that having a gigantic Acrocanthosaurus of this size is extremely appealing to me, so this figure straight away actually looks really quite cool. As far as the sculpting and detailing goes, you can see up here on the face that we have the nostrils sculpted out. We also have like some ridges that run up along the snout of our Acrocanthosaurus. The coloration primarily is a very dark green, and then we have like these light green kind of stripes and spots all over the place. And although they're not quite as highly detailed as you see on the smaller figures, I will say that this one here specifically does sport quite a bit of detailing here in the head area and the face area. The figure actually does look really quite nice. You can see some really nice looking detailing there around the eye. There is no actual paint for the eye because again, that's part of the light up feature, and you can definitely see that it's kind of like a reddish coloration and a little bit of a translucent look because the eye and the tongue do light up when the dinosaur lets out its roar. And you can also see some pretty nice looking paintwork and detailing here to the lower jaw, as well as you have more of that light green that kind of runs up and just kind of jumps back and forth there as far as that darker green and the lighter green. The teeth are painted. They're painted with kind of an off-white, so they have a bit of a more realistic appearance than what you would see if they were just painted with a white. And each tooth is sculpted out and painted individually, and for the most part, they actually do look really quite nice. The inside of the mouth does sport some coloration. You have a pinkish coloration in there. There isn't too much going on as far as detail, but that's, again, to be expected on this style figure. You can also see that pinkish coloration is on the inside of the lower jaw as well, and then the tongue has a reddish coloration, which with the glossy type of a look does almost give it kind of a saliva-like look, but that's obviously just the material used so that we can see the light up of the dinosaur when we again push the action feature. You can also see that the ears are sculpted out here. As we move back into the neck, you can see that the detailing is a little muted overall, but there's actually a lot of really nice creasing to the skin. Like, it's muted in like the scaly aspect, but as far as like the creasing of the skin goes, there is quite a bit of that going on. And you can see again more of that darker and lighter green as we continue to run down the course of the dinosaur. The creasing style texturing to the skin does not cease. That's pretty much the entire appearance of the texturing to the skin of the dinosaur throughout the entire body. You can see it's just loads and loads of creases, which honestly doesn't look that bad. If you take a nice further away look, you can see that overall it does look actually quite appealing. You also have a pretty nice looking arm sculpt. You have the nails painted with a dark gray there on the hands, and they're nicely painted. There's no sloppiness as far as that goes. You can see some more of that creasing here kind of runs to the underside of the dinosaur. You do have the battery compartment, of course, if you need to switch out the batteries. You can see that trademark Acrocanthosaurus, almost a sail-like look up here on the back. Again, very reminiscent of the Battat version. And then you can also take note to some nice muscle tone here in both the thigh and calf region. You can also kind of take note to the kneecap right there. As you lead down into the foot sculpt looks pretty nice. You have some nicely painted nails yet again with a dark gray. And we actually do have the dew claws present, although they unfortunately did not get any paint on them. But we can continue to see that darker and lighter green again run the course of the body as it kind of transitions back and forth. There's a nice curve to the tail. You can see it's a pretty sharp curve once we get so far out. And there's a nice striping effect that does run down the course of the tail. If we take a look at the opposing side, you're probably not going to see too much difference on this side in comparison to the previous side. There is also a darker gray up here on the crest area of the Acrocanthosaurus, so there is a little bit more paint variation to the head. And then the body, for the most part, just looks the same on this side, aside from the fact that we do unfortunately have screw holes on this side, and there is actually quite a bit of them. So if you are not so big on the screw hole thing, which, you know, it's just something that when you get this type of figure, it's pretty common overall to have screw holes on your figures. But if you're not a big fan of screw holes, then you're probably not going to find too much of an appeal factor in this figure, but I can look past them. And on the plus side, they have actually applied all these screw holes to the weaker side, I would say, of the dinosaur, because obviously this side is the more superior side, and there are no screw holes over here. So that is definitely a plus as far as that goes. But you can see that again, as far as like a detailing aspect and the paint aspect, the figure looks pretty much the same over here, just like we had seen on the previous side, except we now have some slits here in the stomach for the noise to come out of as well. And you can see that the paintwork looks pretty nice all over. Again, very reminiscent of the previous older Acrocanthosaurus release from the Terra by Battat line. So, although it's not quite as nice as the older one in my opinion, it's still a really fun figure. And then we've also got ourselves a helicopter, which you can see does look really quite nice as far as the sculpting aspect goes. We have all kinds of fun stuff here on the inside of the helicopter. The actual blades of the helicopter work really, really smoothly like that. Actually works really well. You also have a hook back here, which can articulate, so there is some extra articulation to the helicopter. Not much going on as far as paintwork, as the helicopter is primarily just a blue, and then we have some kind of like silver down here, and then the inside sports kind of an orangish brown type of a look. But even without, you know, an immense amount of paintwork, the helicopter does still look pretty nice and is definitely a fun addition to the collection, and I'm really intrigued to see how well our human figure fits in there. So you could see that as far as he goes, he actually fits really, really well. He's probably going to slide around in there because He's not like seat belted in or anything, but he definitely fits in there really quite nicely, so he works well with the helicopter. And then the figure itself also looks really quite nice. Obviously has kind of like that explorer type of a look to him. Very shiny, glossy kind of an appearance to the figure, I will say that. But the actual sculpting and paintwork looks pretty nice for the most part. There is actually quite a bit of paintwork going on. You can see he has an orange shirt, and then that's actually like an orange undershirt. Then he has a green shirt over top, and then a vest that is orange like his undershirt. He's also got a green hat. His eyes are painted quite nicely. Even his eyebrows do include paintwork on them. And then we have like dark brown pants and brown boots. The specific little areas of the figure aren't, painted or anything like that, but I really don't feel like the figure suffers from that aspect. There is, again, some articulation, as you have articulation in the shoulders. You also have articulation in the head, a little bit, not too much. And then you have knee articulation as well as hip articulation. So quite a bit of articulation going on with our human figure. Then we have an egg, which as well has a pretty nice looking textured appearance to it. You can obviously tell that we can open the egg, which it doesn't want to open for me. There we go. Nothing is inside, so you can place one of the smaller dinosaurs in there if you would like to. But the egg is pretty fun, just a fun little extra as far as this set goes. Again, we have the bow and arrow, like I had stated earlier, and a really cool bluish coloration. And you can actually take the two apart, so you can separate them, which is pretty fun. And again, I love the fact that there's so many extras going on with the set. Like, you don't often get really cool play sets like this from any company, so it's nice to have one here from Terra by Battat. And then we've got this kind of like rope-like, almost a spider web thing going on. I'm not 100% sure what this exactly is meant to be, but it does look pretty fun, pretty decently sculpted. And another little extra that we have in here, we've also got ourselves a little, I guess, baby dinosaur. Kind of appears to almost be a baby Allosaurus, maybe? Or maybe he's actually meant to be a baby Acrocanthosaurus. I don't really know for sure. The detailing aspect of the figure is pretty fun. Nothing, amazing, nothing incredible. Just kind of a cheap little rubber dinosaur. But he is a fun little set, and you can throw him in the egg to make him a hatchling if you'd like. We also have a cage for us to enclose any dinosaurs that we would like to enclose. And the cage does actually open. You can see we have a very nice big gate here. And you actually have this kind of I'm not too sure what kind of dinosaur this guy's meant to be. He definitely does not look happy, that's for sure. But you can put him in here and then close the cage door. And you now have yourself a dinosaur trapped in the cage. And maybe this guy screaming is what drew the attention of the Acrocanthosaurus. And now we are under attack by the Acrocanthosaurus. Who knows? And then we have the building, kind of like this treehouse type thing itself. You can see that we have almost like a vegetation style roof, which is actually really quite fun as far as the sculpt goes. You can also see that as far as the actual base area goes, you can see that there's lots of cracks and stuff, obviously making this look like it's definitely an expedition type of a setting. You also have kind of a hook here, which you can use. It does, if we go ahead and turn this, we can, it got stuck there. You can see that you can extend it and then retract it back in. It works really fun. There's also this ladder here that is included. I kind of just hooked it on here. There are other areas where you can actually hook this on, like actually if we go around the back over here, if I don't drop everything back here, there's like a little hook that you can hook that onto and then have the ladder back there if that's what you would like to do. You can also see the wood here on the side is nicely sculpted. Some nice ropes and stuff are included with it. Then you get down here into like a stone type of an area. You could see more damage done to the actual base area. Also a hole right here that we can actually probably put the egg onto. Maybe that's meant to be where it goes. And then the further down you go, you have this area here. So you can kind of have like a cave type area. And then these bones, which appear to be part of a rib cage, do actually articulate and open up for you to head on in there. We've also got another area over here that almost looks sort of like it's meant to be water, kind of, but there are dinosaur bones included in there as well. And then we have this little area over here, nicely sculpted as far as the stone goes. And then we also have like this area that almost has like a slide type of an effect to it with more stone and everything. And then there's also a little bridge here to cross back over the water. And then this can move. This can actually articulate to, again, provide even more danger on your expedition. So a really, really fun set with just, again, a ton of extras. So I went ahead and just kind of set everything up to kind of give you a rough idea of, some potential ideas as far as play and everything goes, and some areas you could put stuff for maybe display. Obviously, I'm not going to be playing with this, but from a display standpoint, there are quite a bit of possibilities with this set. And then also, as far as our Acrocanthosaurus goes, if we move this over just a little bit without knocking all the stuff over, we'll get an idea of what the articulation and everything looks like on our Acrocanthosaurus. So we do have jaw articulation a little bit, which is part of the action feature. There is also articulation in the neck, which as well is part of the action feature. Then we do have arm articulation on both sides, and then we also have leg articulation on both sides. And that's about it as far as the articulation goes. But then we also have this little lever down here on the underside of the Acrocanthosaurus. And we'll push that, and it's going to give us its action feature as well as the sound. We'll turn the lights off so we can potentially see the light up feature a little better. They're not turned off, just down. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. Pretty cool noise. I like that they don't go for like that classic dinosaur roar. Like they actually try to come up with something original, a little bit more creative. Definitely pretty fun overall. As far as a size goes, in the length department, you are looking at about the 15-inch range, or about 38 and a half centimeters to the tail. And then if we go to the top of the head, which currently is not going to be a very desirable position for you guys to see it from, you are looking at about 7¼ inches, or about 18 and a half centimeters. For a size comparison, here is the older Terra by Battat Acrocanthosaurus in comparison to this much larger sized version, the light and sound version. And if you are familiar with the Terra by Battat line and you do have the older version of the Acrocanthosaurus, first of all, it's pretty cool to see the two here next to each other. But again, you must be able to look at this and say that the newer light and sound version, which is not really all that new right now, but it is definitely newer in comparison to the older release down here. But you could definitely say that the larger version here is much larger, impressively larger in comparison to the initial Terra by Battat version of the Acrocanthosaurus. So this is definitely a pretty fun set from the Terra by Battat line. Again, some people aren't all that sold on these light and sound versions of the dinosaurs, and it's mostly due to the fact that there was a very strong collectability standpoint for the older ones. Like, there was a huge market for those older ones, and they have a very strong following. And then when so many people were awaiting the release of newer figures of that style figure, especially because there are quite a bit of older Dan LaRusso sculpts that were awaiting release, and then unfortunately he had passed away, so those figures never ended up seeing the light of day, and a lot of people were really hoping for them to maybe see like a line dedicated to Dan LaRusso with the older sculpts being released. And then Terra by Battat actually ended up releasing these larger light and sound versions with almost a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World style to them, with these kind of humans interacting with dinosaurs type of a thing. And some people were kind of let down by that, and I will say myself included initially, I was definitely a little bummed because I was really hoping to see more of those older Battat figures get re-released in the Terra by Battat line. However, I will say that as time has gone on, I've really become quite fond of these light and sound versions, and I definitely have taken quite the liking to them, and this was the final one that I really needed to complete my set of these light and sound Terra by Battat dinosaurs, was this Acrocanthosaurus. So I'm super psyched to finally have this figure now in my possession, and even more so to have an opportunity to review it for you guys. The Acrocanthosaurus is really cool. Again, it actually sports a huge size, especially in comparison to the older release like we had just seen with the size comparison, but the fact that the Acrocanthosaurus is so large, I feel like makes the figure so much more impressive, and it's nice to have such a big Acrocanthosaurus figure to include in my collection, or your collection, of course, if you purchase this. I like the fact that they went ahead and kept the paintwork very similar to the older release as well, so now the two look really cool in comparison to each other. But definitely a really nice, pretty natural looking paint scheme. Not too much to it, but it's pretty basic, but it does work really well for the figure. And on top of that, you do have some fun articulation as well as a really cool creative noise for the dinosaur itself. And then you have a light up feature, which doesn't, appeal to me so much, but definitely something that I feel like would really appeal to kids. And considering these are focused toward children, that makes complete sense. And you also have the action feature as well, which has a snapping action feature. And then if you take all of that and compare it with the fact that you get a really cool play set with it, with just tons of extras, this is definitely a fun set overall. You've got a really cool dinosaur egg, you've got that kind of cheap little baby dinosaur, you have this crazy off-the-wall looking red dinosaur creature thing, you've got a cool cage, you've got kind of like a hook, you have a helicopter, you have a bow and arrow, a human figure, and then in general, like, the kind of base area itself, like there is a lot to this set, and especially when it comes to something that kids would like, this is definitely a huge thumbs up in that department, because kids would love this set because there's just so much you could do. Like, I know when I was a kid, I would have loved to have had something like this, to have so much playability in one set. It definitely is something that kids would get a huge kick out of. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this on Amazon.com. So make sure you head on over to the Amazon Terra by Battat store, purchase yourself this very cool Acrocanthosaurus Light and Sound release, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.